In this video, I'm going to reveal to you the secret to mastering the law of assumption. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how you can begin to utilize the power of this law, as well as how you can avoid wasting your energy in mistakes that most people make when they try to apply this law. I'm going to be sharing and explaining quotes by Neville in regards to the law of assumption, as well as giving you an in-depth understanding of why it's so important, how it works, and how you can start to practically implement this law into your life so that you can create the change you really want to see. So let's dive in. First, what is an assumption? Neville describes an assumption as something you give permission or consent to be true. Now, this could be about anything about you, anything about how the world works, anything about how other people treat you, what you're supposed to get, what you're not supposed to get. Some idea you hold to be true. You're giving it permission or you're giving it consent to be true. Now, I want to get into why this is happening a little bit later on, which is totally valid, why you have this assumption. But I believe the more you understand why and where you got it, the easier it is to let it go. But now that you understand what an assumption is, let's get into the biggest mistake people make when they try to use this law, and maybe something you've experienced. First, I want to start with a quote. Neville said, "You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality." So here we are, and the biggest mistake people make when they try to use a law of assumption, they put in a lot of energy and nothing changes. This is the reason, because a lot of people think of the assumption. They think of the assumption that they believe will change their life. They assume that they are worthy of love. They assume that abundance is magnetized to them, whatever it may be. Maybe it's about job, whatever. They think of that idea of the assumption. So it's very mental. And we are electromagnetic beings. Our thoughts are the electrical part. That's what sends energy out to the universe. That's what basically you're tapping into your imagination, that potential of change. But what's the other part of that? The magnetizing. And that's what we actually magnetize into our life. We're drawing it to us. And that's the feeling, the physical, the sensory, as Neville just described in this quote. And until we assume at the physiological level, meaning that it has then infiltrated our subconscious, where we feel it to be true, we literally in our cells believe this assumption. That's the only way that we actually start tapping into the power of the law of assumption. And until you take it from the number one, which is just a mental, the mental is a good start, but you won't see change until it shifts in to the second layer, where it's a sensory, where it's a feeling, where it's in your body, not just a fleeting thought, but actually physiologically, it's embedded in you as a truth. And again, assumptions aren't objectively true, but if you believe them to be true, that is what you're going to experience. Now, this could take you towards what you want, or it could take you towards creating more of what you don't want. So if you've been trying a lot of effort, you've been doing affirmations, you've been doing imaginal act, you've been doing all the different techniques and nothing's changing, you could feel this law doesn't even work. What is the point? This is just a whole bunch of bullshit. But the truth is the law of assumption is working. It's just not working towards what you're wanting to create. It's creating more of what you want based on the assumptions that are embedded into your subconscious, into your self-concept. So now let's get into why the hell this is happening and how the law of assumption works. The law of assumption is massively affecting your life. That's because you cannot see reality as it is. Of all the possible realities that exist right now, and quantum physics shows us through the double slit experiment, which shows us that the observer affects how matter works, meaning the field of energy around is actually affecting what shows up in matter. Dr. Joe Dispenza has a lot to say about this. Now, another way we could say is that your perceptional bias, your assumptive bias, will block out anything that is outside your realm of truth, of assumed. So you do not see this right here. You can't see this with your eyes. you've got these assumption glasses. Whatever these assumptions are, you see through these, and all you can find is what lines up with that assumption. So even though that abundance and those opportunities exist right now, either one, you are collapsing the wave of potential into particle and only finding more of the lack and the almost and the I never get picked. And also perceptionally, you cannot even with your senses perceive of the things that are outside your assumptions. And you might be thinking, that's not true, Abby. If an opportunity for love came into my life right now, I would say yes. I would be able to perceive it. It doesn't matter. Because I see it outside of me, that's going to change my assumption. And the truth of it is, think about any time somebody's giving you a compliment. Maybe they complimented something you did. Maybe they complimented how you look. Have you ever thought, oh, that's a little uncomfortable? No, I just got a haircut. It's not a big deal. Or I wear this shirt all the time. I don't know. I found it somewhere. It's not a big deal. That wasn't even my best work. It's fine. You might want to downplay or push away that reality that you are enough, that you are wonderful, or whatever the different idea would be. Because if your assumption is I'm not good enough, if your assumption is I'm not attractive, anything that doesn't resonate with that will be rejected energetically. You'll push it away. It'll feel like too much. You'll feel like, oh no, they're going to find out this isn't true. They're going to find out I'm really not that great. Or you literally won't be able to see it. This has happened over and over and over, and only when I changed my assumptions was I able to perceive of something different. For me, I kept finding emotionally, energetically unavailable people, and I kept trying to earn it. I kept trying to fight for it, because it was being recreated from when these assumptions were formed, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Because the assumptions you have right now, you didn't just make them up and say, you know what? I think I'm going to assume I'm not good enough. That sounds like a fun life. Or, you know what? I deserve nothing. I never deserve my needs to be met. You didn't just make these up. They were a way to survive. They were literally a survival mechanism, a coping mechanism you created from an early on environment where you didn't have another choice. But that outdated coping mechanism that created a bubble or a space of safety, that if I self-abandon, if I don't have needs, then I'll be okay, which was true in the past. But now it's creating a prison and creating a separation, perceived and energetic, that you can't have what you want. So this is showing you that the law of assumption works. It's just you've got to change what's in the box of assumptions so it gives you new little lenses here. Now he has no eyes. We want to get this. We want to see new lenses here so that you can start perceiving of those things. And when you do, you'll still see the old negative things where you avoid that choice, you make a different choice and move differently. It's not about these things not existing anymore. It's about you being able to perceive of new ones and energetically receive that which you assume to be true. So now let me show you a little bit more on how these assumptions were formed so you can start to dissolve them. Now, if this is resonating with you and you would like to work with me one-on-one, where we sit down on Zoom and I help you to see your pattern, gain more awareness, and give you practical exercises and techniques so you can step out of those old assumptions, I have a link below for a form. You'll fill that out and I will email you, and then we'll sit down, work together, and help liberate you so you can start building the momentum and creating the life you really want and the one you really deserve to have. So check it out below. I want to give you another quote on why this matters so much. And that's from Neville. And he said, the first step in the renewing of the mind, and the mind is the lens of how we see reality. So the first step in renewing that mind is desire. And you have it right now, or you would not be watching this video. Step one, check. You must want to be different. Now realize it doesn't say you must want your outside to be different. You must want to be different and intend to be before you can begin to change yourself. So realize Neville does not say you must want the outside to change and then change the outside so you feel different. He says that you must want and desire and intend to be different if you want to experience a new change, essentially. So where do these things come from? Why do we have these assumptions? Growing up, early on, you had a parent, you had a grandparent, it could have been a teacher, could have been a sibling, somebody who was seen as authority, superior. They knew more than you. There was some sort of uneven power dynamic. Now, this person could have judged you about something. They could have told you how you were was wrong. You shouldn't be so loud. There's so many different things. Don't be so selfish if you went and you showed one of your projects. Money is for them. Money doesn't grow on trees. The messages from this person, and this person doesn't have to be bad. They could have been the sweetest, most loving, but the message they gave you could have affected you in a negative way. It could have distorted the way you see yourself as bad or wrong. This is the birthplace of shame right here, this dynamic. This person who we seek as our only way to survive. Okay, please keep me safe. I have to be accepted. I have to be approved of by you so that I can stay in this tribe, this, my primary culture. And this person knows better about how to stay alive, how to get food, all the resources. So I'm putting my faith, all the chips are in, that this person knows best. And unbeknownst to us, we also give them that authority in terms of emotions. So if they think something about us is, they have a judgment, be quiet, don't be so loud, God, you're always asking for so much. We think, oh my God, it must be true that I'm too much. Because if I wasn't too much, this person would be able to love and accept me and give me what I need. So since they can't or they don't, then it must be me. Shame. Something is wrong with me. So this could have been thousands of different things. This could have been a lot of different ways. What you've got to start understanding is these assumptions that are very, very deep rooted don't mean that they're true. Realize that you will form these assumptions about yourself, specifically in regards to money and relationships. Relationships are, this person, it was basically your introduction to relationships, how they work, how they don't work, who you can be, who you can't be, and get your needs met. So this person could have done as much as they possibly could have and not had the emotional capacity, the emotional space, the emotional maturity to understand your needs. So you could think, oh, my needs are too much. I shouldn't ask for anything. I don't have any needs. Please love me. That was my approach. Or it could be, I need to get away from this person. This person is crossing my boundary too close to me. Whatever the case, this person could also have been physically abusive. This person right here can vary drastically. But what we want to understand is this dynamic and what assumptions it formed. The way that the reason this happened is so you could get some sort of needs met, which were very, so important developmentally to you. So you did a great job creating a strategy to stay alive in that environment. But like I said earlier, now these assumptions are draining you. They are preventing you from the desires, from the experiences that you want and the ones you really deserve to have. So I hope you can see this. I'm doing my best here. But what I want you to understand visually to really connect this is why the assumptions matter so much. Current day, right? This could have been, this could have been 40 years, 30 years, 20 years after this past experience. But current day, you have an event, you have a situation, right? They don't text you back. This was mine. I know I give this all the time, but it's because it's so true. So current day, 2023, you don't get a text back. Now here is where the law of assumption is massive. This event happens that is actually neutral, but because in the past, you were assumed that you were too much, you take that the reason that they did not text you back was because of this old assumption that you're too much. So the story that you add to the current day situation is the assumption from the past applied to the current day. It gives it new life. And because you're unconscious to this, you think that that's just true. Well, of course I'm too much. That's what it's always been. I was a little kid. I found more people who replicated that energy, and that assumption just continued to replay. And so obviously, here we go again. I'm too much. No one ever gives me what I want. I always have to work harder and give more in relationships. It's repeating this over and over and over in the current day, creating the story more and more and more, because it's just repeating the story. It's not a continuation of the story, it's a circulation of the story. And that's the biggest thing you can understand about assumptions. They're circulating. They're not a continuation because it's true. You're just going in a circle. And because you had to do this when you were younger, it can feel scary to break out of this. But now I want to show you how you can start breaking out of this. So you can start creating a new choice by pausing and examining this and upgrading those assumptions so you can start to create a new story and break out of the circulatory story from the past and step into the new story that aligns with that new assumption. So the last quote by Neville, as we step into how you can start applying this in practical ways, the quote is, "Your assumption to be effective cannot be a single isolated act. It must be a maintained attitude of the wish fulfilled." So the first thing is you got to get very clear on the assumption. What story, meaning, reason you're giving something so you can become conscious awareness. Neville talked about awareness is like a light in a dark room, starting to become aware of what is unconscious. And Carl Jung, one of my favorite quotes by him is, "Until you make conscious what is unconscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you'll call it fate." That unconscious impulse, that unconscious assumption formed with that brain that was not fully developed, that is what's driving the bus. The little Abby driving the bus when she gets scared, when she feels and perceives that she's going to be abandoned or she's not safe. If I'm not aware of little me making that choice or putting that meaning in, I continue to be in that circulation. So I want to do a little exercise. I want you to fill in the blank. So let's start here. I want you to complete this statement. What I want the most in my life right now is... Okay, wonderful, A+. Now I want you to finish this next statement. The reason I can't have what I just shared is because... Okay, that last thing you just said is your assumption. And getting very clear on when that starts popping up. I can't have what I want because I'm not good enough, because I'm inherently unworthy, because I never get what I want, because no one will ever love me enough, because I'm unlovable, because I don't deserve what I want, on and on and on. You've got to get aware of how many times you say that. When the impulse starts to come up to give that attachment and label of the meaning, you got to be clear, because what Neville talked about, where your assumption can't be an isolated act, it has to be basically your dominant attitude, your dominant perspective. You've got to start breaking free of the old one. So next thing I want to show you is something very powerful that has completely changed my life, and I know it will change yours, so that you can start breaking out of these assumptions. So I just gave you this example where something comes up in your life and you've got to be aware, because this is basically what we're looking at. When you start to take this neutral experience, they don't call you back, you didn't get the job, the person isn't interested, they don't want to date you, or they're not talking to you, whatever the thing is right here that's physiologically making you feel anxious, nervous, scared, that's when you know your body's going to let you know, especially when you fear you're not safe. So what you want to do is start getting really, really, really clear on that assumption, because you've got to be aware of when it pops up. Dr. Joe talks about this all the time. You've got to be so aware that it doesn't go past and run on autopilot. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to mind the gap by doing ABC. That sounds pretty reasonable. The gap is here. The gap is what assumption am I going to put on this? Am I going to assume that it's because I'm not worthy? Or am I going to assume something new that aligns with that desired reality I want to create? And this is work. This is going to feel uncomfortable. And in the discomfort is a new experience that you haven't yet experienced. It could feel scary. It could feel unsafe, but you've got to learn to trust yourself. So ABC stands for awareness. Now, again, your job is to start getting aware of those assumptions. Start getting aware of those assumptions. So when it pops up, okay, I'm aware. I'm starting to tell myself that story. I'm going to breathe. 4 in, 6 out. I want you to do this at least 5 times. What that's going to do is pause, create space so that you can get more conscious, so that you can make a new choice. Rather than going over here to the old, which is what your mind is, wired to do, so that it keeps seeing that old pattern, that limiting belief, that limiting experience, you're going to mind this gap, create space, and choose something new. Now, you will stumble. This will feel awkward, but even in neuroplasticity, this is the way you stop firing and wiring in this old way, and you start firing and wiring in this new assumption. Practicing feeling safe in your body, practicing using your voice, practicing letting go of these ideas that you're not good enough. They were formed through the opinions, expectations, or judgments by somebody else when you were really, really vulnerable and you needed them to stay safe. But as long as you filter your self-concept through them, you'll continue to stay in the old assumption. You've got to start realizing, what do I believe to be true? How do I see myself? And how can you feel safe in relating to yourself first and then to the world? Learning how to do this is going to massively change your entire experience. Even simply learning to mind the gap will create so much less suffering because you're learning how to stay with yourself. You're learning how to stay in your body and feel safe, and that you have the power to create the change and create the dominant vibrational shift that you want to create that wish-fulfilled experience. And you deserve to experience and have this in your life. Now, understanding this is massively going to help, but how do you start to create space to feel something you've never experienced? Don't worry, this next video right here is going to show you exactly how you can start feeling something you've never experienced, and in the process, understand yourself even more. So check it out right here.